Sean Diddy Combs, a man once worshipped as the king of hip-hop, the mastermind behind an empire built on music, fashion, and wealth. He was the mogul who transformed the sound of an entire generation, the symbol of hustle, ambition, and the relentless pursuit of power. But tonight, his name doesn't echo in clubs or stadiums, it echoes in a cold federal courthouse. The same man who was once cheered on stage now stands shackled, stripped of the image he spent decades crafting. How does a superstar become a convict? How does a self-proclaimed visionary end up condemned by his own actions? This isn't just a story about Sean Combs. It's about power unchecked, about the dark side of fame, and about how even the biggest empires can collapse when the truth comes crashing through the facade. Because behind the champagne, the red carpets, and the platinum records, there was something much darker brewing. And in the end, not even Diddy, one of the most influential men in music, could escape it. We begin decades ago. Diddy wasn't always the superstar the world knew. Born Sean Combs in Harlem, he rose from the streets to the very top of the music industry. He shaped hip-hop, discovered talents like the Notorious B.I.G., and created a brand that went far beyond music. From fashion to vodka, Diddy became the face of All About the Benjamins. Money, fame, and influence, he had it all. But as history has shown us, the higher a man climbs, the harder the fall. But behind the glamour, behind the flashing lights and the billion-dollar brand, the shadows began to creep in. What the world celebrated as brilliance, others whispered was cruelty. For years, rumors circulated of wild parties, secret hotel rooms, and freak-offs that blurred the line between pleasure and abuse. Whispers turned into accusations, and accusations into court testimonies. And once those doors opened, the world saw a side of Sean Combs it was never meant to see. During the 7-week trial, prosecutors unleashed a parade of witnesses, 34 in total. Each one peeling back another layer of the empire. Rapper Kid Cudi, a star in his own right, took the stand and spoke of his Porsche mysteriously firebombed after a falling out with Diddy. Coincidence? Or a warning sent by a man too powerful to cross? Then came Sherry Hayes, known in the underground world as the Punisher, an exotic dancer who testified in graphic detail about nights orchestrated by Diddy himself. Nights where money and power silenced morality. Nights where Diddy, desperate to mask his identity, even wore a burqa hiding behind cultural symbols as he indulged in fantasies that the public could never imagine. But the most devastating testimony wasn't about cars or costumes. It came from someone who knew him better than anyone, Cassie Ventura, his former partner. 9 months pregnant, Cassie sat in that courtroom and broke 11 years of silence. She spoke of beatings, of manipulation, of nights that ended with tears and bruises. She painted a picture of a relationship where love was replaced with fear, and loyalty was demanded, not earned. The world had already caught a glimpse of this truth, the infamous hotel surveillance footage. In it, Sean Combs is seen grabbing Cassie, throwing her to the ground, his rage caught forever on camera. For the first time, the polished image of Diddy cracked under the weight of undeniable evidence. Cassie's words, in her victim impact letter, cut deeper than any headline. The 11 years I spent with Diddy were filled with violence. They left me physically broken and emotionally scarred. Victims and survivors will never be safe. I hope your decision considers the truths that the jury failed to see. And the courtroom fell silent. Because this was no longer about celebrity gossip. This was no longer about rumors. It was about trauma. It was about a woman's truth standing against an empire built on fear. The scandals weren't whispers anymore. They were evidence. They were testimony. They were reality. After 7 weeks of testimony, after 34 witnesses, after months of headlines, it all came down to this moment. Sean Diddy Combs, once the king of hip-hop, now stood in a Manhattan federal courthouse, waiting for his fate. He had already spent 381 days locked behind bars. But today, the world would learn how much longer he would lose. The courtroom was tense. His family sat stone-faced, their expressions mirroring his own. Gone were the flashy suits, the defiant bravado, the aura of untouchable power. Here, there was only silence. The judge spoke firmly, his words slicing through the air. "You abused these women. You used that abuse to get your way, your parties, your hotel nights. The evidence of this abuse is massive." And then, the sentence, 50 months in federal prison, 5 years of probation and a $500,000 fine. For the first time, the mogul who once commanded stadiums, record labels, and fashion brands was powerless. Diddy finally broke his silence. He turned to his victims, Cassie and Jane, and to his 7 children. His voice cracked as he said, "I hate myself right now. I've been stripped down to nothing." But his children weren't silent. One by one, they stood before the judge with tearful pleas, asking for mercy. They spoke not as celebrities' kids, but as children desperate not to lose their father. They told the court that their dad had changed, that the man in front of them was not the same man accused of these crimes. Their voices trembled as they begged the judge to give him a second chance. The defense leaned heavily on Diddy's family history, his role as a father who had raised 7 children through fame and chaos, often presenting himself as the glue that held them together. A video was played in court, showing him holding his twins as babies, highlighting tender moments of fatherhood. The courtroom heard the voices of those same children, now older, sending their father messages of love.
"I love you so much.
I love you so much.
Love you so much.
Hi, Daddy."
For a moment, the walls of the courtroom seemed to collapse into something more intimate, a family, fractured and desperate, clinging to the man they still called Dad. But the judge, though visibly moved, did not bend. "This is important for me to hear," he said to the children. "But a history of good works cannot wash away the record in this case." And just like that, the weight of justice came down. Outside, the scene was chaos. Reporters, fans, and critics crowded the courthouse steps. The same man who once sang "It's all about the Benjamins" was now branded a convicted felon. A public pariah. His defense attorney vowed the fight was not over, boasting of his client's acquittal on the more serious charges of sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy. But no spin could change the reality: the empire had crumbled. Inside the prison walls, fellow inmates reportedly gave him a standing ovation, amazed that someone had beaten the government on the biggest charges. But it was a hollow victory. Because beyond the headlines, beyond the courtroom battles, Sean Combs had lost the very thing he always claimed to protect: his family's trust, their innocence, and the legacy of his name. Sean Diddy Combs' story is a stark reminder that power without accountability is fragile. Here was a man who commanded millions, shaped culture, and cultivated influence across music, business, and media. Yet, in one courtroom, all of that influence could not protect him. The very empire he built, a symbol of ambition and success, became entangled with abuse, manipulation, and betrayal. The victims' testimonies, the hotel attack video, and the accounts of his secretive parties exposed how Diddy's authority was weaponized, showing the dark side behind the public persona. Even his family, the ones who should have been untouchable safe havens, became part of this reckoning. His 7 children, pleading tearfully for mercy, highlighted the human cost of his decisions. The same hands that once lifted his brand, once celebrated his victories, were now forced to witness his accountability. The love and loyalty of his children clashed with the undeniable weight of his actions, creating a public and personal collapse. The judge's words were clear: a history of good works cannot wash away the record in this case. No amount of philanthropy, fatherhood moments, or business success could erase the harm inflicted. And in that truth lies the lesson that power, when abused, can erode the very legacy it was meant to build. Sean Combs' fall is more than a legal sentence. It is a public demonstration of the fragility of empires built on control rather than respect, on fear rather than integrity. It is a warning that even the most celebrated figures are vulnerable when the consequences of their actions finally catch up. In the end, the mogul who once stood untouchable now stands convicted, a testament to the cost of misused power. Sean "Diddy" Combs will spend the next 4 years in federal prison. But the real sentence, the one that will outlast prison walls, is the destruction of a legacy. The man who once embodied ambition, hustle, and the American dream is now a reminder that everything built on lies and abuse will one day collapse. This is the story of Diddy. And it's a story we'll be talking about for years to come.